All right. So we are reading Meet Your Strawman. We are starting on page 44. Just to let you know, there's only like 73 pages left. So we're almost done. We got like one more day of this. By tomorrow, we should be done this book for real, for real. Hey, Doubt City. I don't. Should I make one up? If you want to, NYC. Um, I got two. I don't use them all the time, but I definitely have two. So, just rehashing what we went over already. We talked about how to respond to the police, how the straw man is created, what is the straw man, how the banks move, how money is situated. We talked about the army and bookkeeping and being drafted into the army and how they actually protect private businesses. With Brandon WIlliams, we called up. We're on day 4 now. We talked about the strawman, jurisdiction, the 3 levels of law: earth, air, and water law, and how they interact with each other. We did all of it. So now we're gonna start on page 44. It will not do to allow the greenback, as it is called, to circulate as money any length of time, as we cannot control that. Slavery is likely to be abolished by the war, power, and chattel slavery destroyed. This I and my European friends are in favor of, for slavery is but the owning of labor and carries with it the care for the laborer, while the European plan, led on by England, is for capital to control labor by controlling the wages. This can be done by controlling the money. Goaded by private bankers, much of Europe supported the Confederacy against the Union with the expectation that victory over Lincoln would mean the end of the greenback. France and Britain considered an outright attack of the United States to aid the Confederacy, but were held at bay by Russia, which had just ended the serfdom system and had a state central bank similar to the system the United States had been founded on. Left free of European intervention, the Union won the war, and Lincoln announced his intention to go on issuing greenbacks. Following Lincoln's assassination, the greenbacks were pulled from circulation, and the American people were forced to go back to an economy based on banknotes borrowed at interest from private bankers. Finally, in 1913, the private central bankers of Europe, in particular the Rothschilds of Great Britain and the Warburgs of Germany, met with their American financial collaborators on Jekyll Island, Georgia, to form a new banking cartel with the express purpose of forming the Third Bank of the United States, with the aim of placing complete control of the United States money supply once again under the control of private bankers. Owing to hostility over the previous banks, the name was changed to the Federal Reserve System in order to grant the new bank a quasi-governmental image. But in fact, it is a privately owned bank, no more federal than Federal Express. Indeed, in 2012, the Federal Reserve successfully rebuffed a Freedom of Information lawsuit by Bloomberg News on the grounds that as a private banking corporation and not actually a part of the government, the Freedom of Information Act did not apply to the operations of the Federal Reserve. The year 1913 proved to be a transformative year for the nation's economy, first with the passage of the 16th Income Tax Amendment and the false claim that it had been ratified. I think that if you were to go back to try to find and review the ratification of the 16th Amendment, which was the internal revenue, the income tax, I think that if you went back and examined that carefully, you will find that a sufficient number of states never ratified that amendment. Later in 1913, apparently unwilling to risk another questionable amendment, Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act over the Christmas holiday, while members of Congress who were opposed to the measure were at home. This was a very underhanded deal, as the Constitution, which explicitly grants Congress the authority to issue the public currency, does not authorize it to delegate the author to another party. and so it should have required a new amendment to allow Congress to transfer that authority to a private bank. But Congress passed it, and President Woodrow Wilson signed it, as he had promised the bankers that he would in exchange for generous campaign contributions. Wilson later regretted that decision, stating in 1919, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and vote of majority, but a government by the opinion of the rest of a small group of dominant men." The very next year, World War I started, and it is important to remember that prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve, there was no such thing as a war. No profits, no wars. The First World War started between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, but quickly shifted the focus to Germany, whose industrial capacity was seen as an economic threat to Great Britain, who saw the decline of the British pound as a result of too much emphasis on financial activity to the neglect of agricultural and industrial development and infrastructure, not unlike the present day United States. Although pre-war Germany had a private central bank, that bank was heavily restricted and inflation kept to reasonable levels. Under government control, investment was guaranteed to internal economic development, and Germany was seen as a major power. So, in the media of the day, Germany was portrayed as a prime instigator of World War I, and subsequently not just defeated, but had its industrial base flattened. Following the Treaty of Versailles in June 1919, Germany was ordered to pay the war costs of all of the participating nations, even though Germany had not actually started the war. This amounted to 3 times the value of all of Germany itself. Germany's private central bank, to which Germany had gone deeply into debt to pay the cost of war, broke free of government control, and massive inflation followed, mostly triggered by currency speculators, permanently trapping the German people in endless debt. When the Weimar Republic economically collapsed, it opened the door for the National Socialists to take power. Their first financial move was to issue their own state currency, which was not borrowed from private central banks. Freed from having to pay interest on the money in circulation, Germany blossomed and quickly began to rebuild its industry. The media called it the German miracle. Time magazine lionized Hitler for the amazing improvement in life for the German people and the explosion of German industry, and even named him Time magazine's Man of the Year in 1938. Once again, Germany's industrial output became a great threat to Great Britain, resulting in these comments. Should Germany merchandise do business again in the next 50 years, we have led this war, World War I, in vain. That was Winston Churchill in the Times. We will force this war upon Hitler if he wants it or not, says Winston Churchill in 1936. Germany becomes too powerful, we have to crush it. Again, Winston Churchill in 1936. This war is an English war, and its goal is the destruction of Germany. Again, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill sounds like a motherfucking hater. You said I fuck with Germany? I ain't mad. Germany's state-issued value-based currency was also a direct threat to the wealth and power of private central banks, and as early as 1933, they started to organize a global boycott against Germany to strangle this upstart ruler who thought he could break free of private central banks. As had been the case in World War I, Great Britain and other nations threatened by Germany's economic power looked for an excuse to go to war. And as public anger in Germany grew over a boycott, Hitler foolishly gave them that excuse. Years later, in a spirit of candor, the real reasons for that war were made clear. They dropped newspapers on the Asiatic brothers instead of bombs. They threw a parade for Jesse Owens. What do you mean? Who's they? Like black people? The war wasn't only about abolishing fascism, but to conquer sales markets. We could have, if we had intended to, prevented this war from breaking out without firing one shot, but we didn't want to. Again, Winston Churchill's hating ass in 1946. Germany's unforgivable crime before World War II was at its attempt to loosen its economy out of the world trade system and build up an independent exchange system from which world finance couldn't profit anymore. Oh, Hitler dropped newspapers on the Asiatic brothers instead of bombs. They threw a parade for Jesse Owens. Yeah, I mean, I never had a beef with Hitler. It's America that has a beef with Hitler. And Americans are revisionistic historians because most of them are those Jewish people. They're not the real Jews, so they just be lying. And the fact that my mom used to say this all the time, she used to get mad because during February, during Black History Month, like they would play Roots back to back because, of course, the Asiatic, our history started in enslavement, right? So they would play Roots back to back, but they would play it with commercials and all that shit in between. But then when I don't even know what time of the year it is, but whenever niggas want to play Schindler's List and stuff like that, it's no commercials, it's no interruptions, it's nothing, you know. But that just lets you know they control the narrative. And who is to say that concentration camps was set up the way they saying it? For all we know, they worked at Amazon and Walmart warehouse, which ain't too far to fuck off. I worked at Walmart warehouse. That shit was hell. As a side note, we need to step back before World War II and recall Marine Major General Smedley Butler. They didn't want to go to war with so-called blacks. They knew we were the ancient Hebrews. Oh yeah, nobody wants to go to war with us. Nobody wants to go to war with us, and we don't want to go to war with nobody. It's just a matter of us. The only people that want smoke is these colonizers over here that we still letting do business on our land. And no disrespect to no type of empire or anything, but that's kind of like my little nasty taste in my mouth with the MSTAs, because it's like they're flowing with it because there's treaties. But if motherfuckers is not keeping up their end of the treaty, then they gotta go. Like, what are we still playing nice for? Like, ain't gotta be war or nothing, but like, let's fucking go. The fuck? In 1933, Wall Street bankers and financiers had bankrolled the successful coups by both Hitler and Mussolini. Brown Brothers Harriman in New York was financing Hitler right up to the day war was declared with Germany. And they decided that a fascist dictatorship in the United States, based on the one in Italy, would be far better for their business interests than Roosevelt's New Deal, which threatened massive wealth redistribution and recapitalized the working and middle class of America. They tried to warn and educate us and offered for our brothers to fight with him. He told us we were being treated like dogs on American soil. Exactly, because we are. And we still are to this day. Still are to this day. Everybody want to fight but us because we distracted and we high on sugar and salt and drug and actual, like, classified drugs and all that stuff like that. And as long as that's still going on, it's going to be kind of hard to convince somebody to fight. Everybody too busy twerking. The MSTA made up of people who don't have their life together, and the actual problem is most of them not even real. We got to do the work. Exactly. I agree. And that's why I separated myself and I'm doing the work. We alone. Yeah. We the Nubians. We gotta hey say less, how you doing, beloved? We the Nubians. We're not here to do what already been done. If what already been done worked, then we wouldn't have to be here doing shit. We're here to do new things. And, unite as we do the new things. Because unity is key here, for real, for real. We move in peace. So the Wall Street tycoons recruited General Butler to lead the overthrow of U.S. government and install a Secretary of General Affairs, who would be answerable to Wall Street and not to the people, and would crush social unrest and shut down all labor unions. General Butler pretended to go along with the scheme, but then exposed the plot to Congress. Congress, then as now in the pocket of the Wall Street bankers, refused to act. When Roosevelt learned of the planned coup, he demanded the arrest of the plotters, but the plotters simply reminded Roosevelt that if any one of them were sent to prison, their friends on Wall Street would deliberately collapse the still fragile economy and blame Roosevelt for it. Roosevelt was thus unable to act until the start of World War II, at which time he prosecuted many of the plotters under the Trading with the Enemy Act. The congressional minutes in the coup were finally released in 1967 and became the inspiration for the movie 7 Days in May, but with the true financial villains erased from the script. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service as a member of our country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from the second lieutenant to major general. During that period, I spent more of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I suspected that I was just a part of the racket at the time. Now I am sure of it. Like all members of the military profession, I never had an original thought until I left the service. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of the higher-ups. This is typical with everyone in the military service. Thus, I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American soil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. The record of racketeering is long. I helped purify Nicaragua for International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1909 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. In China in 1927, I helped see that the Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. He has a very interesting word choice. Everything is about rape and molestation. During these years, I had
listening to the psychology theories again.
Yeah, the rapies of the psychologist rapies.
Yeah.
During those years, I had, as the boys in the back room would say, a swell racket. I was rewarded with honors, medals, and promotion. Looking back on it, I feel I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was operate his racket in 3 city districts. I operated on 3 continents. General Smedley Butler, former U.S. Marine Corps Commandant, 1935. As President John F. Kennedy understood the predatory nature of private central banking, he understood why Andrew Jackson fought so hard to end the Second Bank of the United States. So Kennedy wrote and signed Executive Order 11110, which ordered the U.S. Treasury to issue a new public currency, the United States note. Kennedy's United States notes were not borrowed from the Federal Reserve, but created by the U.S. government and backed by the silver stockpiles held by the U.S. government. It represented a return to the system of economics on which the United States had been founded, and this was perfectly legal for Kennedy to do. All told, some $4.5 billion went into public circulation, eroding interest payments on the Federal Reserve and loosening their control over the nation. 5 months later, JFK was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, and the United States notes pulled from circulation and destroyed, except for samples held by collectors. John J. McCloy, president of the Chase Manhattan Bank and president of the World Bank, was named as part of the Warren Commission, presumably to make certain that the banking dimensions behind the assassination were concealed from the public. It's always the fucking banks, yo. Every time you see somebody die or get shot, hey, 5D, it's always the fucking banks. All last year, all them people that ran cryptocurrency died. The year before that, what was that last year when they went down to the Titanic and them people died down there? Then come to find out it was important people down there that had something to do with the bank. Then you get into the actual story, the Titanic, and that was before the Federal Reserve started. Made sure they dropped them niggas over there. Like, it's always the fucking banks. As we enter the 12th year of what the future history will most certainly describe as World War III, we need to examine the financial dimensions behind the wars. Towards the end of the World War II, when it became obvious that the Allies were going to win and dictate post-war environment, the major world economic powers met at Bretton Woods, a luxury resort in New Hampshire in July 1944. How you feeling, 5D? Hey, Keith. And hammered out the Bretton Woods Agreement for international finance. The British pound lost its position as a global trade and reserve currency, and its place was taken by the U.S. dollar. Now, remember, that's 1944. It's only 2024. So all that money make the world go around, bullshit, 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 that's not true. This dollar ain't even been here for 100 years. The fuck? On top of the fact that the majority of the stuff that the United States has done, it didn't start till the 1900s. And that includes the colonization of the astrology stars, if you want to get into that. But I won't get into that today. But if you look at a lot of the different moves and establishments and stuff in the United States, it wasn't until the late 1800s, maybe after 1886, up until present day. So this country is really like that 400-year slave bullshit. We had war, and we just forgot we had war because some motherfuckers infiltrated our space and had us fighting for equality in the education system. And so now we got like 3-4 generations educated by public school education. So now everybody just regurgitating shit in the McGraw-Hill textbooks, which is not information. It's not true. And most of these people are dead. So they can't come back and say, oh, that's not true. I never said that. That never happened, because they're dead. Who's going to tell you it's wrong? Oh, how was work? Without the economic advantages of being the world's central currency, Britain was forced to nationalize the Bank of England in 1946. The Bretton Woods Agreement was ratified in 1945, and in addition to making the U.S. dollar the global reserve and trade currency, obliged the signatory nations to tie their currencies to the dollar. The nations which ratified Bretton Woods did so on 2 conditions. The first was that the Federal Reserve would refrain from overprinting the dollar as a means to loot real products and produce from other nations in exchange for ink and paper, basically an imperial tax. That assurance was backed up by the second, which was the U.S. dollar will always be convertible to gold at $35 per ounce. That ain't shit. Of course, the Federal Reserve being a private bank, that was shit back in 1945. Of course, the Federal Reserve being a private bank and not answerable to the U.S. government did start overprinting paper dollars, and much of the perceived prosperity from the 1950s and 1960s was a result of foreign nations' obligations to accept the paper notes as being worth gold at the rate of $35 an ounce. And that's why there's a lot of war going on in the Middle East and stuff, and people were going after Gaddafi and Haile Selassie and what's the other guy? Saddam Hussein was the most recent one, because they wasn't beat for the dollar. They knew history. So like you notice, these folks always make sure they kill people off that have been historically around. I feel like the only person they wasn't really allowed to touch was fucking Putin. The man is kicking. In 1970, France looked at the huge pile of paper notes sitting in their vaults, for which real French products like wine and cheese had been traded, and notified the United States government that they would exercise their option under Bretton Woods to return the paper notes for good at $35 per ounce exchange rate. Of course, the United States had nowhere near the gold to redeem the paper notes. So on August 15th, 1971, that's not that long ago, y'all, Richard Nixon temporarily suspended the gold convertibility of the U.S. Federal Reserve notes. This Nixon shock effectively ended Bretton Woods, and many global currencies started to disengage from the U.S. dollar. Worse still, since the United States had collateralized their loans with the nation's gold reserves, it quickly became apparent that the U.S. government did not, in fact, have enough gold to cover its outstanding debt. And then in 1974, hip-hop was born to distract you motherfuckers. Like, nah, hey, Draco. Oh, you're not up here no more. Foreign nations began to get nervous about their loans to the U.S. and understandably were reluctant to lend any additional money to the United States without some form of collateral. So Richard Nixon started the environmental movement with EPA and its various programs such as wilderness zones, roadless areas, heritage rivers, and wetlands, all of which took vast areas of public lands and made them off limits to the American people, who were technically the owners of those lands. And that's the public property, or not the reserves, quote unquote. But Nixon had little concern for the environment. For the real purpose of this land, grab under the guise of the environment was to pledge those pristine lands and their vast mineral resources as collateral on the national debt. The plethora of different programs was simply to conceal the true scale of how much American land was being pledged to foreign lenders as collateral on the government's debt. Eventually, almost 25% of the nation itself. And that's why when you look at the map, you'll see that Asia owns a lot of land. England, Britain, France, Italy, Sweden, Russia, they own a lot of land over here. Land that wasn't even, these initial people, it's not even y'all's to sell. But that just goes to show Islam, that just goes to show how wicked these banks are. They came over here, infiltrated our land, and then going to have different reserves or quote unquote public parks or whatever, and going to sell it to other nations because their dollar, they no longer wanted to trade the dollar for gold because only God knows what the fuck they was doing with the gold. So with open lands for collateral already in short supply, the U.S. government embarked on a new program to shore up sagging international demand for the dollar. The United States approached the world's oil-producing nations, mostly in the Middle East, and offered them a deal. In exchange for only selling their oil for dollars, the U.S. would guarantee the military safety of those oil-rich nations. The oil-rich nations would agree to spend and invest their U.S. paper dollars inside of the United States, in particular in U.S. Treasury bonds, redeemable through future generations of U.S. taxpayers. The concept was labeled the petrodollar, which is now falling, and now you see BRICS. This is 50 years later. Now we got BRICS that's denouncing the petrodollar. In effect, the U.S. no longer able to back the dollar with gold was now backing it with oil. Other people's oil and the necessity to control those oil nations in order to prop up the dollar has shaped America's foreign policy in the region ever since. But as America's manufacturing and agriculture has declined, the oil-producing nations face the dilemma. Those piles of U.S. Federal Reserve notes were not able to purchase much from the United States because the United States had little other than real estate which anyone wanted to buy. Europe's cars and aircraft were superior and less costly, while experiments with GMO food crops led to nations refusing to buy U.S. for export. So they don't even want our food because our food is fucked up. So the only thing that America had to offer, which they don't really have to offer because it's not there to offer it, is the land. Israel's constant belligerence against the neighbors caused them to wonder if the U.S. could actually keep up their end of the petrodollar arrangement. And this is why the wars in the Middle East are always going on. And if you guys were here during the astrological report, we talked about how Jerusalem in that Middle East area is actually the solar plexus of the earth. And so we know the solar plexus, God, Yahweh, all that is the God of war. That is the solar plexus. That is the sun that gets everything moving or whatever. So, all of this ties in, as above, so below. Oil-producing nations started to talk of selling their oil for whatever currency the purchasers chose to use. Iraq, already hostile to the United States following Desert Storm, demanded the right to sell their oil for euros. In 2000, the United Nations agreed to allow it in 2002 under the Oil for Food program instituted following Desert Storm. 1 year later, the United States re-invaded Iraq, lynched Saddam Hussein, and placed Iraq's oil back on the world market only for U.S. dollars. Following 9/11, the U.S. policy shifted away from being an impartial broker of peace in the Middle East to one of the unquestioned support for Israel's aggressions, only further eroded confidence in the petrodollar deal, and even more oil-producing nations started openly talking of the oil trade for other global currencies. Over in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi had instituted a state-owned central bank and a value-based trade currency, the gold dinar. I think you can still trade that on Forex. Gaddafi announced that Libya's oil was for sale, but only for the gold dinar. And African nations, seeing the rise of the gold dinar and the euro, even as the U.S. dollar continued its inflation-driven decline, flocked to the new Libyan currency for trade. This move had the potential to seriously undermine the global hegemony of the dollar. French President Nicolas Sarkozy reportedly went so far as to call Libya a threat to the financial security of the world. Yeah, I fucking bet. So the United States invaded Libya, brutally murdered Gaddafi, the object lesson of Saddam's lynching not being enough of a message apparently, imposed a private central bank, and returned Libya's oil output to dollars only. The gold that was to have been made into the gold diners is, as of last report, unaccounted for. According to General Wesley Clark, the master plan for the dollarification, they made up that word hard to sell, but I like it though. I'm gonna put that in a song. Of the world's oil nations included 7 targets: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. Venezuela, which dared to sell their oil to China for the yen, is a late 8th edition. What is notable about the original 7 nations originally targeted by the U.S. is that none of them are members of the Bank for International Settlements, the private central bank located in Switzerland. This means that these nations were deciding for themselves how to run their nation's economies rather than submit to the private international banks. Now the bankers' gun sights are on Iran, which dares to have a government-controlled central bank and sell their oil for whatever currency they choose. The war agenda is, as always, to force Iran's oil to be sold for dollars and to force them to accept privately owned central banks. I want you to read to page 56, the summary. So, right here.
The German government just recently asked for the return of some of their gold bullion from the Bank of France and the New York Federal Reserve. France has said it will take 5 years to return Germany's gold. The United States has said they will need 8 years to return Germany's gold. This suggests strongly that the Bank of France and the New York Federal Reserve have used the deposited gold for other purposes, and they are scrambling to find new gold to cover the shortfall and prevent a gold run. So France suddenly invades Mali, ostensibly to combat Al-Qaeda, with the U.S. joining in. Mali just happens to be one of the world's largest gold producers, with gold accounting for 80% of Mali's exports. War for the bankers does not get more obvious than that. Americans have been raised by a public school system and media that constantly assures them that the reasons for all these wars and assassinations are many and varied. The U.S. claims to bring democracy to the conquered lands. They haven't. The usual result of a U.S. overthrow is the imposition of a dictatorship, such as the 1953 CIA overthrow of Iran's democratically elected government of Mohammad Mossadegh, and imposition of the Shah, or the 1973 CIA overthrow of Chile's democratically elected government of President Salvador Allende, and the imposition of Augusto Pinochet. Or to say that people from a cruel oppressor revenge for 9/11, or that tired will not catch all excuse for invasion. Weapons of mass destructions. The speculations are always passed off as crazed lone nuts to obscure the real agenda. The real agenda is simple. It is enslavement of the people by the creation of a false sense of obligation. That obligation is false, and because the private central banking system by design always creates more debt than money, which to repay that debt, private central banking is not science, it is a religion, a set of arbitrary rules created to benefit the priesthood, meaning the owners of the private central bank. The fraud presets with often lethal results because people are tricked into believing that this is the way of life. This is how things are supposed to be, and no alternative exists or should be dreamed of. The same was true for 2 earlier systems of enslavement, rule by divine right and slavery. both of which are systems designed to trick people into obedience, and both of which are now recognized by modern civilization as illegitimate. Now we are entering a time in human history where we will recognize that rule by debt or rule by private central bankers issuing the public currency as a loan at interest is equally illegitimate. It only works as long as people allow themselves to believe that this is the way life is supposed to be. But understand this above all else: private central banks do not exist to serve the people, the community, or the nation. Private central banks exist to serve their owners, to make them rich beyond the dreams of Midas, and all for the for the cost of paper, ink, and the right bribe to the right official. Behind all these wars, all these assassinations, 100 million horrible deaths from all the wars lies a single policy of dictatorship. The private central bankers allow rulers to rule only on the condition that the people of a nation remain enslaved to the private central banks. Failing that, any ruler will be killed, and their nation invaded by those other nations which are already enslaved to private central banks. The so-called clash of civilizations we read about on the corporate media is really a war between banking systems, with the private central bankers forcing themselves onto the rest of the world, no matter how many millions must die for it. Indeed, the constant hate mongering against Muslims lies in simple fact. Like the ancient Christians prior to the Knights Templar private banking system, Muslims forbid usury, the lending of money at interest. And that is the reason why American government and media insist that Muslims must be converted or killed. They refuse to submit to currencies issued at interest. They refuse to be debt slaves. So off to war American children must go, to spill their blood for the gold of the money junkies. We barely survived the last two bloody wars. In the nuclear bioweapon age, all the private central bankers willing to risk incinerating the whole planet just to feed their greed? Apparently so. Flag waving and propaganda aside, all modern wars are wars by and for the private bankers, fought and bled for by third parties, unaware of the true reason why they are expected to be crippled and killed. The process is quite simple. As soon as the private central bank issues a currency as a loan at interest, the public is forced deeper and deeper into debt. When the people are reluctant to borrow anymore, that is when the Keynesian economists demand the government borrow more to keep the pyramid scheme working. When both the people and government refuse to borrow anymore, that is when the wars start, to plunge everyone even deeper into debt to pay for the war. Then after the war, to borrow more to rebuild. When the war is over, the people have about the same as they did before the war, except the graveyards are far larger, and everyone is in debt to the private bankers for the next century. This is why Brown Brothers Harriman in New York funded the rise of Adolf Hitler. As long as private central banks are allowed to exist, inevitably, as night Yeah, I was right. As night follows day, there will be poverty, hopelessness, and millions of death and endless world wars, until the earth itself is sacrificed to mammon and flames. The path to true peace on earth lies in the abolishment of all private central banking everywhere, and a return to the state-issued value-based currencies that allow nations and people to become prosperous. In the summer,
Huh? My turn.
yeah, I mean, I'm already on 56.
Let me see. Excuse me. So here's a summary. Gonna bust my ass. Before you were born, the bankers operated a scam intended to rob all members of the general public. They removed all forms of money and replaced it with worthless notes which read, "I promise to pay the bearer," with another worthless banknote. They then managed to do away with the government and replace it with a group of commercial companies which they own. Those have to be rinsed off. I got it. They cunningly named these companies so that they look like government. They took over the reprinting of the worthless banknotes with their private company called the Bank of England, which is meant to sound like a government organization, although it most definitely isn't. So anything with of is private. They try to do the same malicious tactic with China with the war on tariffs of soy. Yep. Then they try to do it in India when that Monsanto shit. They know that the wind blows the seeds. That's not no fucking surprise that wind blows seeds, but they blow the seeds on people's farms. So now you got all the Indians committing suicide because they were getting fined because those are trademark seeds. So they like, oh, you got the so you had people that were deliberately going on the Indian farms and testing the crops, knowing damn well the wind was blowing the seeds, whether I paid for the Monsanto seeds or not. And so they're charging them, and they're like, well, if I die, I got life insurance or whatever, whatever. So it was a whole mass suicide situation happening in India with the farmers. And it started happening in America too. Don't get it twisted. But it was definitely very heavy in India. It was fucking sick. The next step in their cunning plan was to get their company, which sounds like the government, to ask their other company, the non-Federal Reserve Bank, to print them lots of worthless money and to charge interest on that money over and above the face value of the currency. This excess interest amount is called the national debt. In order to fool ordinary people into believing that their country somehow owes somebody large amounts of money. Firstly, there's actually nothing owed at all. Secondly, there is no money. Thirdly, this country does not owe anything. And in the unlikely event that there were a genuine debt, then it has nothing to do with ordinary people, as it is just a national debt incurred by one commercial company to another commercial company. This is why you have to stop being a commercial property, because you are basically saying, oh, we in debt, boss? We sit, boss? No strongman bullshit. We don't got nothing to do with what y'all doing. This supposed debt has been boosted over the years to a ridiculous level, which can never ever be paid off. And you will no doubt be glad to learn that all income tax is now paid to the owners of these commercial companies. Isn't it great to be paying vast sum of money to commercial companies which has never done anything for you, which holds you in utter contempt because you haven't discovered their scam, and continue to pay lots of ridiculous taxes, fees, and charges, none of which you need to pay at all. Combined, these charges amount to more than 80% of a person's earned income. Do you enjoy living on 1/5 of what you actually earn? Yep, sovereignty is the start, and that's what we're learning while we read the Strawman. To strengthen their scam, they have invented a language of lies called legal terminology, where they have changed the meanings of ordinary English words in order to abuse and rob ordinary members of the public. They have set up a company called the Law Society to train up unscrupulous people in their methods of deception and lies. Their commercial company, which pretends to be the government, keeps inventing new statutes, which they pretend are laws, which they most definitely are not. And they keep telling everybody that they must obey these laws and that they have subverted policemen and policewomen and convinced them that they have to enforce these statutes. The primary aim of the statutes is to take cash, goods, and property from members of the public who have not yet discovered that it is a scam being run against them. Many policy officers, that's why. Many police officers are probably themselves ignorant of the fact that statutes are purely optional and no human is actually bound by them. Just to clarify the situation, breaches of the law are dealt with in a genuine court with jury. Hey, Mafia baby. All other matters such as taxation, bank loans, and parking restrictions, speed limits, and the like are dealt with in a fake court, which is a commercial company and part of a violent protection racket style scam, which is wholly unlawful but enforced by violence, threats, and intimidation using bailiffs and police to protect the bailiffs from being attacked. There has never been Mafia baby. You know how to declare your nationality, sis? I'm good. How you doing, my love? There has never been any law which demands that you pay any form of tax, license, or other charge. What you decide to do is entirely up to you. You can continue to give away most of your income to fund people who want to harm you, or you can decide to step aside this corrupt system and stop paying these people. All humans are born equal, so nobody has the right to order you around unless you agree to give them that right, and that choice is yours. Again, coming back to the GOD, the 764, I'm telling you, This is the How You Meet Your Strawman book. This one was only like $7 on Amazon. I got the collection of books. We're gonna finish reading that book tomorrow. We're gonna finish the last few pages, and then we're gonna move on to the next book. The next book is let me turn my camera on so you can see it. This is the next book that we're gonna read, the UCC Connection. We're gonna start this book on Saturday. How to Free Yourself from Legal Tyranny. We're gonna get into the UCC codes, which is the Universal Commercial Codes. They be telling us that we be going by laws and stuff, but nothing that they're doing right now is lawful. It's actually commercial codes that they're enforcing. So that's what we're gonna be on. So now we're about to do this video. Yeah, it's $15 for all three. I got all three. So that's what we're gonna be reading for the next couple weeks is all three. And then the last book that I had, so this will be, the next book, Common Law Handbook. And then this one, How to Outsmart the Credit Bureaus. And then once we finish reading these books, I'm going to get into actually reading the acts with you guys, the federal, going through the paperwork, the FOIA, showing you guys the process of the things, reading the UCC code with you guys, all that. We're going to do all that together. What time on Saturday? I ain't going to hold you. I'll be winging it. So if you see me go live, just hop on. I'm not going to hold you. So here we are.
Okay, video number. I need your help, and here's why. I'm on a mission to recover $10 million within the next 12 months to American patriots. Okay, video number 4. What's up? This is great. We're really rolling now. Hope you guys are really getting a lot out of this, and it's not too much. If it is, just watch through all the videos to the end, and then start back over again, because some of the later stuff is going to apply earlier and this and that. It's kind of hard to really do it all in a way where it's all going to be one shot. It's kind of a 2-shot deal, I think, this course in general. So 2 shots is the charm for minimum. Maybe 3 for some people minimum, okay? So let's go on to the next part. We're going to go on to the all caps name. So what is the all caps name in relation to United States, which means a federal corporation, which means a private for-profit corporation, which means the District of Columbia? What is the all caps name in relation to that thing? And what is a U.S. citizen in relation to that thing? Well, it's called a franchise. So let's slam right into it. We have the word franchise here. Now, you on the upper right here it is, franchise. This is from Black's Law, 4th edition. So franchise basically means a special privilege conferred by government on individual or corporation, and which does not belong to citizens or country, generally of common right. So again, you are saying you're a U.S. citizen. You're saying that you live in Washington, D.C. You work for them. You're underneath their rules, their laws. You don't have the Bill of Rights. You don't have the Constitution. You don't have jack shit. You don't even have your state constitution. So the state of California has a constitution. Not even that applies to you when you say you're a U.S. citizen. Fucking nothing. Like the United States Code applies to you. Basically, you're basically a public servant in the eyes of the law. You're basically a government employee, public servant. Oh, by the way, employment, if you study employment in the code, in the U.S. Code, employment does not require payment to be considered employed. So even without getting paid, you are considered an employee of the federal government when you put U.S. citizen on everything. So, yeah. So let's get back into franchise. So franchise, you're basically like, this is why you have to get a marriage license. Think about it. You have to get a license to get married. So actually, let me see here. This is page 862. We're going to go to the word license really quick. I think we're going to be getting into that later in the course more, but this is important because this goes right into franchise. So we're going to get into license, a license to live. Ooh, I got a license to die. Yeah. Ooh, I just want that license. Give me a license. I just want a license to live. Give me a license. Yeah. Give me a license to live. All right. License. What does it mean? Doesn't mean what you think it does. What does it mean? You are not going to be happy about this one. Certificate or the document itself which gives permission. Let's see here. There's one particular definition that you will love. Here it is. Bada bing, bada boom. This one's going to piss you off. Boy. Right here. I'll highlight all the good stuff here for you. Permission to do something which, without the license, would not be allowable. So think about that in relation to a marriage license. You are such a fucking slave that they don't let you get married. You have to ask permissions from your slave owners to get married. That's what a marriage license literally physically is by definition. Here it is. You can see it. There's the word license in the dictionary. You can see up top, Black's Law 4th edition. Let's go full screen. Oh, that actually fucked it up. I laugh because it's just so fucking ridiculous. Here, license, scroll down. Permission to do something which without the license would not be allowable. And people like think that's like normal. Like, oh yeah, you need like a concealed carry permit or license to like, or a fishing license. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Only slaves need licenses. Okay. And the only way you can be a slave is through you telling them that you're a slave. They can't make you a slave. No one can make you a slave. That's the part that's so like, you're going to get pissed off in this course and you might be like already fucking furious, but it's like, dude, really at the end of the day, you signed documentation for your driver's license stating that you were a U.S. citizen. You didn't even realize it. You didn't even think it said, are you a U.S. citizen? Yes or no? You selected yes. Your passport. Are your parents U.S. citizens? Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes, 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 yes. You selected yes. Marriage license, concealed carry permit, fishing permit. Dude, I could go on and on and on and on and on. There was something else that I saw the other day where they asked me about a U.S. citizen, and I laughed. I forget what it was, but they're asking you this question all the time, and you're saying yeah, and you're not saying with the gun to your head. You're not saying it while you're drunk. You're not saying now. Is it a legal contract? No, technically it's not, which we'll get into later. But it doesn't matter. The bottom line is that when you say yes, yes, yes 9,000 times to something in the law, that's what you are. Even if your body's located in California, it doesn't fucking matter. In the law, you are a U.S. citizen. You are a fucking slave. Slaves only have the rules and rights that the slave owners are willing to give you. The board of directors of the private for-profit corporation known as District of Columbia, known as United States, gives you whatever laws, whatever rights they want to give you, and they'll fucking take them away tomorrow. That's what a license is. Permission to do something which without the license would not be allowable. The livestock are not allowed to marry unless we give them a license. Hope you enjoyed that. Going back to franchise, page 862. This is going to be so much better than trying to hunt this thing down. 862. Boom. All right. Zoom out a little bit. Zoom out. There we go. Back to franchise. Franchise. A special privilege. You pathetic fuck. We are going to give you We're going to give you a license to get married. We're just that kind. We're going to marry the state into your marriage and fuck you up the ass royally all the time. But we'll allow you. because you're a buddy. Franchise, a special privilege conferred by government on individual or corporation, and which does not belong to citizens of country generally of common right. So you don't have the Bill of Rights. You don't have the Constitution. You don't have the Constitution of your state. You don't have fucking anything. All you have the same rights as the public servants do. And the public servants are underneath like a terrific amount of pressure. They flipped the whole trust on us, basically. So like the police, by definition, are policing the US code and stuff like that. So technically speaking, they're policing that of which applies to our public servants. But our public servants, quote unquote, have flipped all that on us, and now they do it to us. Technically, law enforcement, police they're enforcing laws that are really only supposed to be enforced for our public servants, people who actually are U.S. citizens. So if a person lives in Washington, D.C. and they work for the federal government, they are by definition a U.S. citizen. So those people are the ones who the police are supposed to be policing. But since everybody's fucking filed as a fucking U.S. citizen, basically in law, legally, the whole fucking country is basically Washington, D.C. Or more importantly, there's like maybe, a couple 100,000 or a couple million of us state nationals that actually live on the land on our states. And then everybody else in the whole country, I don't know if it was like 330 million or something like that people or whatever it is in the country. So 332 million people live in Washington, D.C. And then there's just like a million of us scattered around the different states. And like legally, that's actually what the situation is currently. You're all franchises. So you are handed, you have to beg for your rights. You have to pay to get your FFL, your gun, your permits, your special permits to get certain types of firearms. You have to pay to get a marriage license. You have to pay taxes. For example, look at this. Scroll down on franchise, and we have the term franchise tax. A tax on the franchise of a corporation, that is, on the right and privilege of carrying on business in the character of a corporation for the purposes of which it was created and the conditions which surround it. All the taxes that you pay are essentially franchise tax. So you're in the system. You don't realize that you're in the system. You are a franchise. You're paying franchise tax. You're constantly backing up and beefing up the contract by saying that you're a U.S. citizen, by responding to your all caps name, by paying bills, paying taxes in a certain way. I'm not telling you not to pay taxes. We're going to get into that later. But the way in which you pay taxes, you're signing W-9 forms where if you look at we're going to get into this a little bit here. Let's W-9 tax form. We're going to get into this more later, but let's just quickly tap this. So if you go into the W-9 and you go down to section 3, we're going to zoom in on this. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Under penalties of perjury, I certify that. Number 3 says, I am a U.S. citizen or other U.S. person, which is defined below. Okay, let's scroll on down. They put the shit right there. Like, okay, yeah, it's a fucked up definition. And yeah, it like fucks people up and like tricks them. But dude, it's like, it's right there. Like the way that the government and the IRS operates is they operate on what's called plausible deniability. Like, well, we put the definition right there. I mean, technically you can get pissed off, but like technically that's kind of true. Like they really kind of do sort of have plausible deniability, even though they are tricking people big time with some of these words. So definition of a U.S. person for federal tax purposes, you are considered a U.S. person if you are an individual who is a U.S. citizen or U.S. resident alien. Now we're going to get into what that means. That's another one. So let's just go through it right now. I'll show you more information on it later. A U.S. resident alien is somebody who lives in United States, which means District of Columbia, but they don't necessarily work for the federal government. So U.S. citizen, they live in and they work for. A U.S. resident alien lives in but doesn't necessarily work for the federal government. That's the two terms, okay? A partnership, corporation, company, or association created or organized in the United States or under the laws of the United States. Again, District of Columbia. An estate other than a foreign estate or a domestic trust. Domestic meaning inside United States, which means District of Columbia. So that's what U.S. person actually means on the W-9. So you're signing this form under penalty of perjury that you are this thing. So basically, you're committing perjury when you sign this form. And there's a whole shitload of different forms, and we're going to get into all the different forms. There's so many forms you've never even heard of, forms that a lot of accountants have never even seen because they're fucking idiots. Accountant, I'm sorry if you're an accountant, that's very mean. You're not an idiot. You're just you've really had the blanket pulled over your head and you've been beaten to death. And it just sucks. When you learning all this is going to really fucking suck because you're going to realize that you went to school for a long time to be brainwashed, but at the same time, now that you're learning this and what I'm going to show you, you can make more money as an accountant than like literally anyone in the entire country is making times 10. So let's say right now you're an accountant. Hats off to you, bro, for fucking doing this course. This is fucked because I'm just some fucking retard in California. One stupid fuck. And if you really going through this thing and you're really like digging this information, then dude, hats the fuck off to you. That's amazing. But yeah, if you're an accountant and you're learning this information, dude, prepare to charge 10 times. So if you're normally making like, let's say you have a small practice and you're making like, 150,000 a year, get ready to bump that up to like $1 million and a half, because when you learn all this stuff and you start doing this, bro, you're gonna be the most beloved, most sexy, most wanted accountant in the whole country, because there's not hardly anybody doing what I'm going to be going over in this course. I'm going to be doing it for people. I'm going to charge a whole lot more than fucking $1.5 million a year for people to do it. But basically, yeah, you can take your career and your business as an accountant or as a lawyer into levels that are just literally uncomprehensibly high fees and just almost no marketing required to fill your practice to the point where you are completely breaking at the seams. So there you go. If you've got the fucking balls, go for it. I don't expect a lot of that to happen. So if you are an accountant or a lawyer and you're watching these videos and you're going to switch over, hit me up. That's dope. So we've gone over the All Caps name as a franchise. We've gone over the W-9 form a little bit here. The next thing we're going to go over is the definition of the word person. So you're going to see here, even on this W-9 form, U.S. person. Okay, so this word person, this is the most fucked up word. So besides the word United States or term United States, which means District of Columbia, which is totally fucked everything up, the second most fucked up term, or actually probably the number one most fucked up term really, is the word person. So you think to yourself, oh, person means like a human being, like a person, right? Like a doesn't mean that at all. So you're going to realize here real fast, in law, nothing really means what you think it means, which is why the world's so fucked up and which is why your life is so fucked up. And it's why you pay 70% of all your money to taxes and you work for the federal government for free as a withholding agent if you own a business by withholding people's income. They don't pay you for that. Nobody ever stops to think like, damn, I'm like withholding all this money for the federal government through payroll, but I work for free. Like, do you know what working for free means? Do you know the word used to describe working for free? It's called slave. So yeah, keep that in mind. Now, hey, if someone's like, dude, the fucking IRS pays me $90,000 a year to fucking withhold payroll taxes. Okay. I mean, that's a little bit more understandable. That's not slavery, at least. But when you're a withholding agent, you work for free and you withhold people's income, through your payroll, you're a slave. You're literally a slave by definition. Wow. I can't find the word person here. This is amazing. Person, peonage. Let's see. Yeah, that's kind of funny. Sometimes I just get lost in this thing, man. I'm just like cruising through here, looking for a word, and then I'm like, ooh, it's like shiny diamonds everywhere. Ooh, here's a nice one. And then I'm like, wait, where was I? And then it's like, oh fuck, I don't know where I was. So if that happens to you, it happens to the best of us, because that means you're fucking woke, man. That means you're awake, because you're like, whoa, like you see something and then you're like in it. You know what I mean? You're like locked in and you're fucking ready to learn. Okay. Person. Term may include artificial beings as corporations, quasi corporations, territorial corporations, foreign corporations, usurious contracts. Oh my God. Corporation is also a person under a penal statute. Corporations are persons, as that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. The word person means fucking like everything. Persons are of two kinds, natural and artificial. A natural person is a human being. Artificial persons include a collection or succession of natural persons forming a corporation. A country is a person in a legal sense. I mean, it says here a country is a person in a legal sense, but a sovereign is not. Sovereign meaning somebody who's completely disconnected from all this junk and stands alone in common law. So when you sign with the word person in anything, you're basically saying that you're a corporation, trust, natural person. You're like, whatever. Like, basically you're kind of saying like, yo, like whatever you want to make me for whatever reason that like benefits you and fucks me in the ass, go for it. That's what you're saying when you say person everywhere in a document or something like that. That's basically what you're signing when you sign something like that. So just keep in mind that, you can write the definition of the word person on a document. Documents and forms, they can always be changed and adjusted. It doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily accept the form, but when you see the word person, you may want to write like at the top, like natural person, or you may want to, like, when you sign it, you may want to say like natural person. I'm going to teach you how to sign shit later. But like, these are words that mean so many different things that if you want to be more careful and you want to have your rights and you want to control things better, you can be like, no, like, and you can kind of rope them in and be like, no, dude, like, I'm not all these fucking things. I'm not like all the shit that you can make me whatever you want, whenever you want to fucking jam your 9-inch dick up my ass. Like, no. That's not how this is going to work. Like, I'm going to be just this one thing and that's it. I'm going to lock it in and like, fuck you. You're not fucking me in the ass. Like, I don't want to get fucked in the ass. I'm not in prison. I'm not a slave. So when you say natural person, generally speaking, that's what they're referring to. But you can say like the living man, because a man and a woman has rights. A person does not necessarily. When you say man or woman, it's like boom, right? When you say man or woman that lives on the land of the Republic of California, and has the full human rights and abilities of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution after you change your status and everything, which I'm going to teach you in the course. When you say it that way, it's like there's no way they can kind of fucking get in there and change you up in order to fuck you in the ass. So basically, they just have a hard dick, and they're literally just trying to figure out how they can bend you over and fuck you in the ass like all the time. And if you think of it that way, without getting angry, boom, that's the key. Always think of it that way and be on the defensive and be clarifying your words and definitions while at the same time not getting angry. And boom, you are like fucking golden. You're going to be completely outside of literally every body of statute on the planet. And you're just going to be completely free and to do literally whatever you want. So yeah. And then there's one last thing I wanted to share with you on this point involving franchises. There's literally a case law point that I wanted to share with you. I'm going to share a bunch of other case law with you later. So case law, real quick, case law just means they use it as a precedent. So you've probably heard the word precedent. This is well known that like law is based on precedence, which is like the previous thing that there is some truth to that, but that's like super low level shit. That's like super, super low level. That's like many steps down from what we're learning in this course and what we're teaching. So there is such a thing as precedent, but really all case law is by definition is the opinion of a judge or an opinion of a body of people who have heard this. So I'm not trying to show you this to have it be some kind of like word of God kind of thing, because like technically it's really not. But case law is really interesting because you have a judge who sat there and listened to all this shit for God knows how long, and then he's at the end, he's like, "Yo, this is the deal from what I can tell of what's going on here." And there's a lot of judges that have been honest, good people, and they've been like, "Yo, this is kind of what's up," right? So we have here under this one right here, Wheeling Steel Corp versus Fox. It says here, therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity.
If you believe that God has a bigger plan for you than to work a mediocre 9-to-5 job for the rest of your life, then you must see this.
So what they're trying to say in this court case is that you are literally owned property of the District of Columbia when you're a U.S. citizen, and when you say you're a U.S. citizen, when you sign that shit over and over and over and over that you are, and you sign a W-9 form, and you sign a fucking driver's license, and you sign a fucking passport, and you sign a fucking concealed carry permit, and you sign a fishing license, and you sign a marriage license, and it's like, okay, even if it was like I made one accident and I checked one box on one form saying that I was a U.S. citizen, that's not what's happening here. There's like a whole shitload of forms and signatures all over the place of you under no pressure or stress or duress saying like, oh yeah, U.S. citizen. A lot of people are like proud of it. They're like, I'm a U.S. citizen. Like where I'm from in Indiana, U.S. citizen. Yeah, America. And it's like, bro, you don't have a fucking clue. You're literally saying, like, you don't know that you're saying this, obviously, otherwise you'd be fucking pissed. But you're saying like, yeah, I'm a fucking slave. I am a bitch. I am literally a bitch. I'm like the fucking like an S&M and shit. Like I'm literally in like a fucking gimp suit and I'm on all fours and I'm meowing and I have like a fucking collar on and I'm like just this fucking like sex doll for the District of Columbia. That's what you're saying, literally. And they give me these little rights and like I'll pay them to get like maybe just a little bit more of my rights. And it's like, it's so great. America's so great. And it's like, no, dude, it's so fucking pathetic. I mean, nobody knows any of this information. So like, I get it. Like, I'm not trying to make fun of people on here because it's like, it's literally like impossible that anybody would have ever figured this out. So I'm not trying to be like a dick or something like that, but just like, when you step back and you swallow this fucking gigantic horse pill of what's really going on and what you're really signing on these documents, you go, and it's like, now this is the first part in this course where you're starting to see that you're tied into all of these. Now, this one is you're tied into, let me make sure I'm on the video correctly here. On this one, you're tied into you're tied into one particular contract, right? So let's draw this out so I can really show you what I'm talking about here. So here is here's United States, quote unquote, right? And this actually means District of Columbia. And there's statutes. Fuck tons of statutes. The U.S. Code, the CFR, the fucking, I forget what that even means. Something federal regulations. CFR. There's a bunch. There's the Internal Revenue Code, which we're going to get into later. There's all these codes, statutes. All that shit is all right here. Okay. And then here's you as a natural person or natural being or natural man, natural woman. This is, little side note, by the way, this is why you're seeing all this gender dysphoria bullshit in the media. They're pushing like this whole birthing person. You can't define a man. You can't define a woman. This is all part of, and you could say, this is a conspiracy theory. No, I don't think it is, because only men and women have rights. And if you fuck up and muddy the definitions and you fuck up and muddy and people don't they get confused and they don't realize, like, am I a man? Am I a woman? It's like, if you're not a man and you're not a woman and you can't define what those things are, you just lost all your rights, bro. You're a slave. Like, that's the end of the fucking story, because the law only gives rights to men and women. That's it. So for all the people that have fallen into this whole fucking rabbit hole, monstrous pothole of men and women, and there's no definitions and there's no gender and all this, bro, that shit is literally all fucking designed to have you stand up. I mean, people are standing up and saying, like, I'm not a woman, I'm a birthing person, you're not a man. Like, they're literally saying in that same breath, I have no rights. I have no rights. I don't want my rights. Legally, in the legal world, that's literally what they're saying. So they don't realize they're saying that. But that's what they're saying, and that's the design of the whole thing. So keep in mind, this is the matrix. This is the matrix that you're going to be pulling out of with this course. And is that technically a fucking theory? I mean, I guess, do I have like hardcore evidence that points to the fact that that's what's going on? No, but dude, it makes perfect sense to me. If you want a populace to not understand or not want their own rights or sign away their own rights, that's the best way to do it, man. Like, oh, men and women don't exist anymore because only men and women have rights. Maybe I'm wrong. Call it a theory. I don't know. Seems true to me. Anyways, so here's you as a man or woman. Okay. Now you have the driver's license. Now, what contracts you into U.S. citizen? U.S. citizen. What contracts you into this, quote unquote, right? We have the driver's license. We have marriage license. We have passport. Depending on what you put on your passport, because if you came from another country and it says U.S. citizen, and you're like, no, I've never been a U.S. citizen, and you say, no, my parents were never U.S. citizens because you came from Germany or something like that, actually your passport's fine. There's ways to get more upgraded passports and stuff like that, but people who they don't even realize it, but people who do that, people who come from other countries and they put no on U.S. citizen, they actually get a more powerful passport that they don't even realize that they have, which we'll get into when we get into the passport section. So we got the driver's license. That ties you into the contract. We've got the marriage license. That ties you into the contract. We've got the passport. That ties you into the contract. We've got taxes. If you're signing W-9 forms and stuff like that. we have got that one ties you into the contract. And there's actually a way you can pay. I'll teach you a way you can actually pay taxes using a particular form where you can pay taxes in a way that doesn't actually tie you into the contract. For those of you that are really, really scared about taxation and paying your taxes and stuff like that, and you still want to pay the taxes, but you want to make sure you're not contracting into the United States as a U.S. citizen, I can teach you that as well, just in case you need like a two-step process and you just don't feel comfortable, you're kind of scared to do the one jump. I'm going to teach you how to do that as well. So you have taxes, you have the driver's license, you have the marriage license, you have passport, and then you have like stupid shit too. Like even like a fishing license or a hunting license. Anything with the word license in it, pretty much. If the Constitution or the Bill of Rights gives you the right to do something, yet you are still requesting a license to do it, you're basically saying, like, the way the legal world thinks of something like that is you're saying, like, this dude doesn't want his rights. He doesn't believe in his rights. He doesn't know his rights. And he's asking for permission to do something that he already has the right to do it. Thus, he either doesn't want his rights, doesn't understand his rights, or doesn't really want to have anything to do with his rights. So it basically assumes that you are a U.S. citizen and that you're tied into these contracts and on the statutes. They're basically saying, like, this dude is acting as though he's a U.S. citizen because he's asking for rights that he already has. So he must be a U.S. citizen. He signed the papers. So what you're going to do in this course, and what we're going to be teaching you, what I'm going to be teaching, I keep saying you're going to go through and kill all these fucking things, man. Kill this one. You're going to kill this one by changing your passport. You're going to kill this one by changing your driver's license. You're going to kill this one, taxes. You're going to kill fishing, hunting. You're going to kill all these contracts. And then at the end of the day, and there's other things that you're tied into as well. This right here, what I'm showing you, because this is the whole point of the course, is to kill contracts. This is the main contract that allows police to give you traffic tickets. It takes away your right to bear arms. Taxation, sales tax, state tax, city tax, all the laws. If a cop can write a drunk and disorderly ticket on you, or a DUI, or speeding, or blowing a stop sign, or, I mean, literally every single fucking thing that any cop can pretty much write a ticket for in any way, shape, or form, as long as you aren't hurting anybody. That's common law. That's different. It's called victimless crime. So what happens is that in the end, you wind up in common law. And we're going to get into this more later, but basically now the only way that you can get in trouble with the law at all is there must be a victim. And this is another caveat, very interesting. The state cannot be the victim. Now, why is that? Because the state is a public servant. The state is the trustee. You're the beneficiary. So the trust law is always senior. So the state cannot be the victim. So there has to be another victim, and it can't be the state. And that is once you separate out, and once you slice out, I have the light on my thing here. Once you slice out all of these contracts, so taxes, driver's license, marriage license, passport, fishing, hunting license. There might be other things too. Each person's different, but this is like your basic stuff that most people have. Once you handle all of these and change them and adjust them and change your status, which we're going to talk about that too. So that's actually another one. We'll do citizenship, because there's really no other way to describe it. That's how they describe it. So you kind of have to use some of their terminology sometimes. Citizenship. Notice it says ship. It's kind of interesting, right? Because we go over vessel earlier. citizenship status, and the codes tell you exactly how to change your status, and there's lots of different types of statuses that you can choose from, and there's one in particular called a state citizen, and that's the one that we're going to be doing because that's the one that gives you back all of your rights in law. So once you correct that, that kills off the contract as well. So this beast, and it's got these tentacles, and you're going to cut off each individual tentacle, and that's the only way you can defeat the contract. You cannot defeat the contract by slicing just one of these. So you have to slice them all. It's like a Medusa head, a bunch of different heads, and you have to slice all of the heads. You have to locate all the heads and slice them all. And then once you slice them all, you are free. And that is the definition of freedom. Oh, so that's it. This was supposed to be a short video, but I guess it's never going to happen. Anyways, that's video number 4. And this is kind of, I think, the first breaking point where you're probably just now starting to see kind of where we're headed with this course. All this information is all extremely important. I'm cutting all of the fat out of the course. So realize there's a lot of material here and there's a lot more to come, and it's all necessary to understand for you to achieve this and to slice all these contracts and become truly free. So, yeah, that's it for video number 4. I hope you got a lot out of this. It's fucking badass. This course is really rolling along nicely. And I'll see you at video number 5. Bye-bye.
My new book,
This for the gentrifiers. This for the gentrifiers. Papa Legba, Yeshua, Ilegua, come out, Papa Legba, Yeshua, Ilegua, come out, Papa Legba, Yeshua, Ilegua, come out. 'Cause this is our land. Yes, we was here first. They came here on a boat. They'll leave here in a hearse. They'll leave here through the dirt. They're going through the earth. We're channeling their ancestors to undo their hurt. 'Cause once upon a time, we all could read and write. That legalese is lies. Strong men spelled cursive ties. Strong men all caps disguise. They've gentrified our lives. We've redefined their sights. We've redefined their kind. Yes, this is juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. This shit here is voodoo music. When you chant, they gonna lose it. Yes, this is juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. Yes, this shit is voodoo music. When you chant, they gonna lose it. When you chant, they gonna lose. Which ancestor you gon' choose? Play their game, but by our rules. I'm Queen Annie the Maroon. I am Queen of Dongo. I am Queen of Zinga. I am Yenaga. I'm Carlotta and Fermina. 'Cause this is juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. When you chant, they gonna lose. Which ancestor you gon' choose? 'Cause this is juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. When you chant, they gonna lose. Which ancestor you gon' choose? 'Cause I am a goddess. I am a priestess. I chant these mantras and they all repeat it. If we make a promise, this land we gon' seize it. Get vengeance for Mother Earth treason. This for the gentrifiers. This for the gentrifiers. This for the gentrifiers. This for the gentrifiers. Repetition of empires. Invading land with gunfire. Slavery not posters for hire. Income not what you desire. Outcome working jobs for hours. Mindset waiting to retire. Never stop working for dollars. 'Cause this is juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. Which ancestor you gon' choose? When you chant, they gonna lose. 'Cause this is juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. Which ancestor we gon' choose? When we chant, they gonna lose. Ashe, I mean, my spirit guides coming with that sin. My ancestors defend. I got that juice to transcend. Yeah, ashe, I mean, my spirit guides coming with that sin. My ancestors, I got that juice to transcend. Masata. I am a host. I am a homie. I am a Tamba. Yes, I am a Tamba. Cause I am a Sati. I am a Sata. I am a host. I am a homie. I am a Tamba. Yes, I am a Tamba. Yes, this is Juju music. This shit here is voodoo music. When we chant, they gonna lose. Which ancestor we gon' choose? Hey, choose. Cause when we chant, they gonna lose. Which ancestor we gon' choose?
Mess with the wrong witch, and she knows it. And now you know it.